Well, here we are back once more. We've got Larry Nightdive Cooperman with the best t-shirts ever. So he's from Nightdive Studio. If you don't know what Nightdive Studio is, you're supposed to already know all this stuff, but just you can go ahead and cheat. And what'd you say? Look it up on Google.
There we go.
What it is. Yes. He's talking about from startup to beloved, building your studio's reputation. Super important. Larry, take it away.
Okay. First of all, if you can't read the T-shirt, it says, "Will someone please think of the shareholders?" And if you ask if it's intended to be ironic, the answer is yes. I always tell people, come for the T-shirt, stay for the presentation. Before we start, just want to give a quick shout out to Amy, Ash, Dan, and of course the one and only Jay Powell. Without their efforts, none of this would be happening, and I certainly wouldn't be here today. So thanks to them for making that happen. I've been in the industry for close to 25 years, and lately I've become more involved with and more concerned with giving back to the industry. So with that preface being said, let's get on to the presentation. Okay, so why is it relevant? Who cares about reputation? The first thing that I would say to you is that reputation has value, a real world value. You may not think so because it's not quantifiable. You really don't put anything beyond a dollar for goodwill on your balance sheet in terms of reputation. But if you've ever gone and tried to secure a partnership for your studio, Nightdive has partnerships, long-lasting ones with NBC Universal. We've worked with Microsoft, Bethesda on re-releasing games like Quake and Doom, and certainly with Disney on Star Wars Dark Forces. They become aware of your reputation. The other part that I would say is if acquisition of your studio is ever in the future, and it may well be, reputation is going to be something that's going to become very, very important. So that's the kind of real world value to reputation. The other thing that I would say to you is even if those things seem far away, if you're an indie studio and you're trying to sell your first game, people buy your game not because of what it does, because they don't know that until they get it, but based on what they think it's going to do, and that is influenced by your reputation. Okay, so and then who am I to speak on reputation? I already said, Larry Nightdive Cooperman. I get around, certainly. If you do a search on either Larry Cooperman, Larry Nightdive, or Nightdive Studios, you will see a whole variety of articles. I'm pleased to say that overwhelmingly positive is probably the overall sentiment, and that's something that at Nightdive we've been very aware of. That being said, so what you're going to get from this, as you could probably tell already, I'm used to doing business presentations, so this is focused on that. First of all, it's based on real world experience, on things that happened to me personally and to Nightdive Studios as a company. It's relevant in that I expect that you're going to take some of these ideas and put them into practice immediately afterwards. And it's actionable in that I am going to assign homework. I'm going to tell you things that you should do that will make this more important and more relevant for you. So the Nightdive story, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. It is publicly available. Steve Kick wanted to play System Shock 2. He was on a sabbatical. He found he could not play the game, that there was no legal version of it available. Instead of stopping there, Steve began to do some research, found who owned the rights, and began the licensing process. The first rights that we acquired were only to republish System Shock 2. But that began the Nightdive business. It was based on that success that our company was started. And I joined the company a year after Steve had first published System Shock 2. And I began the process of acquiring the remaining rights, which was something that we wanted. So we acquire those rights. I don't mean to gloss over that process. That was over a year of weekly phone calls to the council at, at Star Insurance Company that involved creating and finalizing a contract to transfer those rights. So none of that was trivial, but we had this immediate success. And then in 2016, we announced that we would be doing a Kickstarter to fund the development of a complete reimagining of the System Shock game. And we were very successful. Our Kickstarter raised $1.35 million. And we had put together a team. We had already created a demo. We knew the direction that we wanted to go in. And so with this budget of $1.35 million, we began what was supposed to be a year-long process to create the game in Unity. That was what we had told people we were going to do, and that was the direction that we started to go in. So it was a bit of an adventure. We ended up changing our teams. We ended up changing engines. The game was not going to be made in Unity. It would be made in Unreal. The scope of the game changed a couple of times. And we hit a major bump in the road. I was the one that actually wrote and issued the press release about what was happening. And if you notice, if you look at that slide and the excerpts from Eurogamer and for Polygon, they both use the word hiatus. I really thought that everyone would know that hiatus meant we were taking a break, but we would resume development. That perhaps got lost in translation. So let me tell you what happened. We issued that statement on Friday. Every major journalist reached out and contacted me, and every article that focused on the troubles that we were having contained my name and the H word. We don't say that word anymore. We would just refer to it as the H word. That happened on Friday. That was all of the U.S. publications. On Saturday, the European publications caught up with the news because, time difference. On Sunday, Asia caught up with it. On Monday, news articles continued to come out. It's funny. Our troubles with System Shock garnered more publicity than our success had countered. I guess it just shows that people love bad news. That said, this is not a sad story. If our story ended here, I would not be doing this presentation. So we did launch the game in 2023. We launched the PC version of it, and it won awards. In 2024, the console versions on Xbox and PlayStation came out. Again, very well received. We had come to a happy ending on the story, and our Kickstarter backers have all had, our obligations have been, or in fact, real time. Some of the stuff is still in transit. Like the last few items are still in transit. But we have fulfilled those obligations, and by and large, our fans are happy with us. I will point out that had we been a different studio, had we taken some different directions, the problems that we had creating the System Shock game and fulfilling our obligations through Kickstarter could have ended our studio, but they didn't, and that's what really this is about how it didn't. So there were a couple of things. First of all, this is a screenshot of our our Kickstarter page. We did 108 updates. We were constantly in touch with fans. We talked to our fans a lot. We got yelled at a lot. We posted updates, and we also got yelled at for those. We kept working and kept showing what we were creating, and despite getting yelled at, people stayed with us. So the first thing that I would say is communication, and at this point, I need to give a shout out to a couple of people. There is a special place in heaven for community managers, for comms managers. I want to thank Carly Wetzel, who was on the Nightdive team, who handled our Kickstarter and our communications in general throughout one of the most challenging and difficult periods. Carly, we have not forgotten you, so thank you more than I can say. And Morgan Shaver, who's our current community manager, and Morgan does a really great job communicating with our fans. So that was one part of it. Communication was really the key. The second thing about Nightdive is, and this is really what saved us, we did not put all of our eggs into one basket. We continued to make remasters, and the remasters, different than remakes, remasters that you might have heard of from Nightdive: Turok 1, Turok 2, Shadow Man, Doom 64, and the other games that we did for Bethesda, and of course Star Wars Dark Forces. So we were continuing to do our remasters while at the same time working on the System Shock remake. Essentially, we were running two businesses simultaneously, with the revenues from one business supporting the development that was being done by another business. And if you think it's easy, you might ask yourself why this is pretty close to being unique for an indie studio. The remasters alone would have been a successful business unit. And again, these are just some excerpts, some recent ones. This isn't me saying this. I'm just quoting a couple of other people about globally renowned, loving remake. I mean, it's really great when the press use it, and that is a big part of our reputation. Just remember that while these were going on, we had a second team that was working on the System Shock remake in a completely different engine. We use our proprietary Kex engine for all of our remasters. The remake was being done in Unreal. So it was an interesting challenge for the management team over at Nightdive. All right, that's probably enough about Nightdive, but just to bring this full circle. So we launched a Kickstarter. It was successful. We began the development of the game. We ran into a major stumbling block. We had to stop and restart again. And so what I originally said was going to be a project that would take 1 year with a budget of $1.35 million became a 7-year project with a budget of over $7 million. That said, we were really, really happy with the outcome of it, with the System Shock game that we made. And I hope some of you have played it and have had the opportunity to enjoy our work on that. Enough about Nightdive. Let's move on. So, okay, that's what Nightdive did. Now, how can you draw from our lessons and use that to build your own reputation? I'm going to talk about this quite a bit, but there are really, as I see it, three pillars. Intentionality, and I use that word a lot. It's doing things with a purpose, with an intent in mind. Consistency of thinking about how you're going to do things, creating a plan of action, and then implementing that on a daily basis, even when it's not a good day for you, when you spilt orange juice on your pants or whatever. It's forcing yourself into that habit of consistent work. And then integrity. And integrity is kind of the hardest one on here to define, but I tell people your reputation is who you are, and who you are is who your reputation says you are. Okay, let's talk about that intentionality. All right, look, social media, I mean, we all live in this world. It can either be a time sink or a valuable tool. And the difference is intentionality. You can pick your platform of choice. I'm going to use Twitter or brand X if you prefer that, simply as an example because of familiarity and longevity. So begin by asking yourself this question: who are the people that can help you? Who are the key people for you? And I'm going to opine that for every studio that might be listening to this, every developer, that answer is going to be different. But you begin with the intent of who do you want to reach. So for me, my focus is mostly on people in the media, both the larger media and most specifically with game journalists, a field that is under some duress at this moment. And I begin by creating lists of people that I want to have contact with. How do I know who do I want to meet? There are a lot of journalists out there who are going to be significant for me. I would look at the people who have reviewed games similar to the games that I make, by virtue of genre. So I'm very into retro. I'm mostly concerned with people in the media that focus on retro games. I would offer John Linneman at Digital Foundry is one of those people. That may be a different answer depending on your studio and depending on where you are and what your goals are. But let's say that you're in a particular area of the world, that you are an office-based company. Just FYI, Nightdive has always been completely distributed. Don't have an office, never did, never will. But maybe you're concerned with making games in a particular region. Well, who are the other developers in that region? Who are the local media? Maybe local stuff isn't your interest. Maybe you want to break into the Asian market. Maybe that's your goal. Who are the people that can help you do that? So beginning by asking those questions, and one thing that I will say over and over again, make lists. Keep on coming back to that. Make lists. Okay. And you should schedule time every day to work on this, to building those kinds of relationships. And the last thing that I'm going to tell you is effective communication is communication that is immediately relevant to the other person, that does not require the other person to say, why would I want to respond to this? So, as an example, I am an indie developer and I have made a game. I hope you like it is not a compelling thing to post to a journalist on Twitter. You're maybe you will get a response, but it seems unlikely. On the other hand, your recent article about indie developers really struck a chord with me. Thank you for writing it. Is something that may cause the other person not only to pay attention to it, but to say, well, who is this person that is thanking me? What do they do? They mentioned indie developers. Are they an indie developer? Should I look at their studio? Okay. Remember, you chose these people as being key in your field. So presumably they're creating content worth sharing. So the you wrote a great article isn't something that's going to feel unnatural to you. If they're people whose work you don't like, then you probably shouldn't be following them, right? But if they do write stuff that you think is interesting, compelling, maybe they did a review of a game that is similar to the game that you're working on, then you have a common ground. You have something to begin that conversation. And let me just add on here one of my life lessons. If you think that people in the media do not appreciate a pat on the back, they don't appreciate praise, they don't appreciate your sharing their article, then you're not following me on Twitter, because I do that all the time. Okay, so we've covered what you should do. You should identify key people. You should reach out to them. Your communications to them should be relevant to them, should be interesting for them to read. You should think about what their needs and expectations are, and you should try to meet those. Now let's talk about what not to do. So I use this scenario. I use this story a lot because this happened. It's 6 years ago, which seems like a long time ago, but it really isn't that far. A discussion began on Twitter. A narrative designer posted their thoughts about narrative design, and somebody responded by saying, "Really interesting thread to read. However, allow me to disagree slightly." And that began a Twitter spat. My comment on this, you really have to look at how long the people involved in this. It started with Jessica Price, but then Peter Fries, and I don't know either of them, and I hope that things worked out for them, because they did both lose their jobs over this. But how long were they going on before a thought balloon should have popped up over their heads, going, "What am I doing here?" They kept on going, and they lost their jobs. My thought to you is this: if you spend more time arguing with random people on the internet than you do talking to people who could actually help you, I'm not sure that this presentation alone is going to solve your issues. I get the whole "there's somebody wrong on the internet" thing, and I know how you can get drawn into those rabbit holes, but that's where intentionality and, to some extent, consistency really come up. So, okay, we've talked about intentionality, and so the takeaways that you have from this is, on one hand, you're going to create your own strategy for building reputation. You're going to think, who could help you to do that, and you're going to reach out and seek those people. And the other part is that you're going to make that a part of your daily activities, right? It's not going to be something that you do just once and say, "Hey, I sent a nice message to somebody on Twitter. Where's my reputation going to be at the end of the day?" That's not going to work for you. It's stuff that you do over and over again. I did a lecture recently for developers, and I'm not a developer, but that was my audience was, and I told them, I said, if you want to know, if you want to know a single thing that differentiates the pros from the amateurs, both may have to-do lists, but if you look at the to-do list of the pro and you look at the to-do list of the amateur, the pro's to-do list changes, and the amateur is still doing the same thing over and over again. So you want to create activities that are discrete, that you can do, that you can tick off your list, that have value, and you want to do those on a daily basis. I was very, very much influenced by Ed Deming, Total Quality Management. That was something that I encountered in healthcare, well before I was ever in the games industry. The first statement of Deming's 14 points, create a constant purpose toward improvement, is something that is not just a great business aphorism. It's probably a pretty good way to run your life. So again, we're going to create a strategy, and we're going to enact that strategy on a consistent basis, and we're going to block out specific periods of time for that, and we're going to constantly measure our effectiveness and tweak it. One of the things that I will talk about is timing. Do you use the same timing every day? Do you vary it? Do you shape it up? We'll get to that. So when we discussed intentionality, we agreed that you're going to schedule time every day, right? To building relationships. So let's talk about how we might implement that strategy, how we might tweak it. Is there a best time to post? Are there multiple times? Maybe if you're West Coast based the way I am, maybe you work on your contacts in Europe and the East Coast of America in the morning, and then the West Coast later in the day. Does that make sense? If you're based out of Europe, maybe you don't do this during your day. Maybe reaching out to American journalists is something that you do in the evening. But you can do that same thing. The point is that you're constantly measuring it and constantly trying to say, what is the most effective strategy? Then another thing to take a look at, which of your posts have the greatest impact, and how do you replicate that? Let me give you an example. Maybe the most effective thing that you can do is when your game or your company is being reviewed, you simply retweet that. If you look, and I'm giving away my state secrets, but if you look at the way that I will do things, I will call out the media outlet that wrote an article, and I will also thank that specific journalist. So that's two separate things. I'll give you an example of that. I might thank PC Gamer for an article, but I will specifically state that it's always a pleasure to work with Andy Chalk. Why would I do that? There's a couple of reasons on that. First of all, Andy likes it when I do that, and I might get another article down the road because he had a favorable experience working with me. But secondly, a lot of journalists, especially in today's economic climate, freelance or work around. So Andy is pure PC Gamer, but I might work with Pete A. And Pete A. might write for Polygon one week and Kotaku the next week. So it's important that I call out not just the company, but also the individual that wrote something to my favor. So this is one of the things that's hard to understand, but consistency in this case means constant adjustment, constant fine tuning. But you can do it. You get the feel of what works and what doesn't. Okay, a couple of other thoughts about trying to reach the widest possible audience. Not everyone reads everything. And so you really have to spend some time, although I said I would use Twitter as my example, you really have to spend time on places like Facebook. And I'm going to say the bane of all developers, all technical people, you want to be on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is most likely to be ignored, but don't. This is where the suits hang out, and one day you might need their money. Other places you really want to also focus on things like the Steam forums, because that affects obviously your commercial viability. Reddit, etc. Reddit, of course, now bubbles up pretty high in search results. So there are a number of other places, but you want to have at least some degree of touch on all of them. Okay, so this is also one of my favorite points to kind of bring up. You know, one of the things that's fairly easy to do is to be well informed. So places that I look at pretty much every day: PC Gamer, Game Industry, Game Informer, Retro Gamer, Kotaku, Destructoid, Polygon. You should, at a minimum, know that day's gaming industry hot topics, and you can leverage those. Let me give you an example. You hear that ABC company just had layoffs. Okay, so you had a contact at ABC company. Reach out to them and find out if they're okay. You know, people truly, truly do appreciate that. And if they are not okay, if they have been impacted, be the first one that offers to help. There are things that you or anyone can do. Writing a reference, if it's somebody that you've worked with, write a reference on LinkedIn. Post job leads. If nothing else, just be moral support. Our industry is hurting, and anything that we can do to ameliorate some of that pain is worth doing. And people will remember that. Okay, we get up to the last of the pillars: integrity, the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. Am I sure that this belongs in a presentation about the games industry? It does. I'm going to say this as bluntly as I can. It is who you really are, and it always eventually comes out. Eventually can take a long time. I pulled these fairly recently. Just examples of, you can fool all of the people some of the time and some of the people all of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all of the time. And as I point out on the slide, yeah, but you can get pretty rich while that fooling is working. Look, if somebody becomes motivated enough and is willing to search through all of your social media, anything that you ever said can and will be used against you in the court of Twitter. So that sounds like it's really scary. It's challenging. How do you get through that? So this is my my personal brand, and I like to refer to it as consistent or relentless positivism. Look, I'm not an influencer. Don't want to be. That's all good. I went into this business because I wanted to make games, and I'm truly fortunate that I get to do that, get to work with a great team of people, and got to work on some of the greatest games of all time. So I should be happy, and I am. I also support other developers. So I had a blast playing Dave Oshry, New Blood's latest game, Fallen Aces. Just absolutely love everything about it, from the play style to the art style. No reason I shouldn't say that. Work with people in the media all the time. Zach Zwisin of Kotaku held to an embargo, even after another journalist had violated it, and I wouldn't have held it against Zach had Kotaku gone out early. But I just act like a human being. It's not terribly difficult to say thank you to somebody for being a good person, even if they are journalists. That's humor. And the other things, we work with limited run games. I support them. Why wouldn't I do those things? The last thing I'm going to talk about is my personal life, and I guess it was the beginning of June was the first time in 40 plus years I took a stage and did some stand up comedy. That's my personal life, but but there you go. I'm perfectly willing to share it. So the things that the things that I try to communicate is that I, as a person, as the real Larry, I'm happy. I'm glad to be alive. I love what I do for a living, and I'm pleased to be here doing it and to share it with you. If you want to be liked on the internet, my easiest suggestion is just be a likable person. So there's that. Getting close to the end of the time, and I did want to share a couple of things with you, just some last notes. Do what I'm doing now. If you want to build reputation, become an expert. Everybody has a unique perspective that comes out of their own experiences. Share that. There is someone out there who wants to know about your mistakes and about your successes. And you should look for opportunities to do this, not only online, but look to speak at your local IGDA, International Games Developers Association. I've been a member for, God, I don't know, 12, 15 years, something like that. One of the best parts of my career. Love working with the people that I meet through the IGDA. It has absolutely been great for me. It takes a lot of work, but the rewards are 100 times what you put in. And I just love the Danny Trejo quote: "Everything good that's ever happened to me came out of helping others." So as I draw near the time, if you want to see my reputation, please feel free to find me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Blue Sky. I seem to be omnipresent, and also look for me to be a frequent speaker at Indie Game Business if they're going to be kind enough to invite me back. And I think I brought it in 3 minutes early. So thank you very much for attending.
Hey, how's it going, Larry?
Good.
You brought it in 13 minutes early. We'll accept it, though. We'll accept it from you.
I left 10 minutes. I left 10 minutes for questions, Dan.
Left 10 minutes? Okay. All right. Well, then your clock's wrong.
Yeah. No. I wanted. I had 3 minutes of the presentation, and it's all right. Oh my God! I take a look and I see Sir Kane from Nightdive asking the inevitable question about bad rats.
Yeah. I actually have that one clued up right here.
Yeah.
Well, Nightdive ever remaster Bad Rats? I actually own that game.
Dan, I may come to you about that one. Depends on what you mean when you say own it. Yes, perhaps one day. You should also know that the reason that Sir Kane has an NDS up at he works with me. Mm-hmm. So he's not content to give me gas at work. He's got to do it in my post-work life as well.
Well, I mean, that seems like the best time to do it. So
yeah. I'm reading AO Games. How do you continue brand success after a big event or award to propel your brand, for instance? That is an absolutely great question. So first of all, so you've debuted your game at, say, PAX, just finished, PAX West just finished. You've debuted your game there. So the first question that I have for you is, it was successful. All the people there loved your game. My question is, how many people from the media did you invite? That's what the media is for, because the media will continue that momentum and that wave of success. Most of the time, if you're at, say, PAX and you're talking to people at the media, they're not writing the article for publication that day. That article will be published post-PAX, and that will continue your momentum going forward. So again, the answer to that is in the consistency to build your list of media people that you can talk about that can follow up after your initial success. Wolf asked, how would you get started in today's market with things shifting all over the place, with little firm B2B ground to stand on? So that's a tough one. It's hard today, but the first thing that I would tell you is begin with a project that you feel has the greatest chance for success. So if you're an indie developer, if you're like most of us, you have games that I refer to as our white whales that like Moby Dick, like that's what you really want to devote your life to making that game. That's the game of your dream. If that game is a bit obscure, maybe you want to put that game on the back burner until you're a little bit more successful. So start off with something small and discreet that you think people will like, that does not require an enormous investment from you in terms of time and effort. Begin slow and build. Remember, it is a gradual process. And don't be afraid to start at the basement and then work your way up, because that's the way you create the most stable environment.
Right. Okay. Well, let's go back to. I want to talk more. You're just burning through them questions.
I know.
All right. I'll field the questions to you because I might want to comment in between the questions.
You go ahead.
Taking my job from me, Larry. Coming in and just swooping it from me.
Didn't realize it was a union position, but go ahead, Dad.
I get paid the same whether you're talking or I'm talking, so it doesn't matter. All right. So my question for you. So do you think that PAX is a much better place to get news coverage instead of or GDC? What do you think is better? Because I always loved the GDC indie section. That's my favorite.
So PAX is where we go to get in front of consumers. It is intended to be a consumer facing show. That said, Dan, if you're depending on the reputation that you go in with, because there are fewer journalists, there are also fewer stories being pitched at PAX. So if there are only 3 journalists, but you get all of them to come see your game, they will probably write about it.
Right. Except for there's literally hundreds of booths at PAX. And I mean, there is a lot of games in the indie section. Anyways, it's been a couple years since I went to GDC, but don't you think there'd be a lot more journalists at GDC? There
are. Unfortunately, there are journalists unfortunately, while there are a ton of journalists, there are also people like I don't know, Nightdive Studios, that one fair GDC announced that we were being acquired by Atari and probably pushed everybody else's stories off that page.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the problem, that at PAX, you're competing with other indies roughly on a par with you. At GDC, you're competing with Square Enix, EA, Activision.
I mean, at PAX, they have those big old booths too.
Yeah. It's just
interesting. That's interesting
for
sure.
It's just a question. And the other part, Dan, that's why I emphasize so much about having done your work on the internet before you go to the show. Right. This isn't a 1 day or a 3 day thing that you can build your reputation just by being at a show. You've done 362 days of lead up work before you set foot at PAX. You already have a list of who's coming to you.
Right. Right. It's just PAX is so packed.
I know. and of course, because it's also consumer facing, you also come back with the Pack Pax.
Yeah.
So don't assume that you're going to be, hale and hearty the week afterwards. While you mentioned that, Dan, I would also point out to people that it is going to be high, but it depends on where you're located. But if I could only hit one show, and my success for the next year would be based on that show, the show that I would hit would be Gamescom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never been to one of those, but I hear it's awesome. But that's the show to go to now. Not E3. Not E3 anymore.
Right.
That's awesome. All right, so let's see. We just did you just did this one, yeah?
Well, no, actually, I wanted to talk a little bit about Yannick's point. Yannick made a statement rather than a question, but you want to read it, Dan?
This one right here?
Yeah.
In this industry, we gain so much more from cooperating than competing. Always aim to build genuine human connection.
So let me start off by talking about stuff that is 100% relevant. I'm hoping that every developer that's in the audience today is aware of the update from Steam about creating bundles. So if you make a game in a particular niche, if you do a first person shooter, you can actually create a bundle with other developers. There's a boomer shooter bundle on sale on Steam at the current time, which comes from multiple developers.
Mm-hmm.
So the competition, cooperation versus competition is really, really on point at this time. If you think that that the success of other people working in the same genre as you is going to create an obstacle, you're probably thinking about things wrong. If a particular genre starts, it's the old hackneyed phrase, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Mm-hmm.
If the guy next to you just made a really interesting, innovative first person shooter, and you are also working on a first person shooter, everyone that bought his game and will be looking for something new at some point in the future has become a suspect for your game. So,
that's right, because it creates interest and hype, regardless of that genre.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I talk about with especially for developers that are just starting out, there might not be enough interest in just what your studio is doing to have an article. But if you partner with 3 or 4 other studios that are doing something similar, you might now have a topic that is hot enough to engender some real substantial interest, and that helps everyone.
Right. It's kind of like when I got Balatro, then I just started searching for other card games that are similar to that are cool. Have I found any yet? No. If you've got any recommendations, I'm up for. Or Helldivers. That extraction genre kind of was faded out, but then Helldivers came. Now it's like you're looking for that. You're looking for something that feels good, that's that exciting. Yeah. So here's another question about Steam. So it used to be that you could link to other things. So on a store page, you could be like, "Oh, check out my other games," but that was removed, the way I understand it. How has that affected you?
It has not affected us. It has not affected Nightdive. I mean, we had to do some cleanup about links and things that were posted, external to the Steam walled garden. But that really isn't going to harm me, because we have enough, because of our reputation, because we have a sufficient reputation that people are going to be able to find our other titles without our having to point them over there. The other part that we have done on that is that's where the creation of bundles also comes in, right? So clearly someone that bought Turok or bought Turok 2 would be interested in Turok 3 and would and might be a suspect for a bundle that consisted of all 3 titles, right? So that's one way to get around it. But again, to the original point, for a smaller company, for somebody just starting out that wants to say, "Hey, we do other things," that's where you really have to turn. You can't just use Steam as your only source of contact. You really have to turn to social media.
Right. But also, I find myself doing this too. When I'm on a Steam page, I click the developer to see what other stuff they've made. I click the publisher, and I bet if we talk to Chris Zukowski, because he tracks that kind of stuff. You know,
Yeah,
he
absolutely.
gets with people and he watches where they click and what they do. I bet that there's been an increase in that. I would just venture to say, okay, let's look at this question. Here's a great one from Desiree B on YouTube. And she says, I'm a high school student. Is there any tips to building a brand, even though it won't be refined or so focused at the moment?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you should start on that. Let me give you some really, really simple to implement tips on that. First of all, find out at your school if there is a local branch of the IGDA. Again, that's the International Games Developers Association. Might not be at your high school. Perhaps it might be at the college, or perhaps there is a local one in your area. But if you can, join that. Participate in game jams. Always keep the product of those game jams, because by the time you get out of high school, out of college, you're able to walk in there with a portfolio that shows the kind of work that you're doing. When it comes to hiring decisions, I am much more motivated by what you can show me rather than what you can tell me. So that speaks to me. I mean, clearly, if you show me a game that's in this type of genre that I'm looking to create, that is persuasive beyond telling me, oh, I love those kinds of games. So that would be the best advice. The other thing that I would caution is, especially for high school, you are going to be exposed to one type or another of toxic situations. Do not feel that you have to fix that. Feel absolutely empowered to walk or run away from those.
Yes. Yes, that's such good information. And also, like, if you're building your because your brand is your social media, right? Your social media is your brand.
It's
If you're
certainly
building
part of it.
that,
Yeah.
don't get involved in any kind of controversial stuff. You see a lot of people jump on bandwagons or for whatever, and then they're aligned with that period. Just think of the future. Like, you see people that have emails. It's like weed smoker 29, right? You don't want that, right? You don't want that, because 10 years from now, that's not going to be a good email to apply for.
Especially when weed smoker 29 is applying for that job in med school.
Yeah. So
in game development, that's fine. I mean, I'll take weed smoker's resume any day. No, I'm only kidding.
And it's for game development, it's fine. And it's better to, in online situations, it's better to just ignore them and block them and move past, and just don't pay any attention to controversial. And like you said, build a positive brand, positivity.
I'm going to try to avoid the word controversial, because that kind of means, but ask yourself in every situation, what are you going to get out of it? What is the outcome that your action is going to produce? And if the answer is it's not going to change anything, then why bother?
Right. And if you're doing it because you want to be a game dev and you're building that, you have to think along those lines, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Amelia K on YouTube. How do you keep those lists of people you mentioned? Good old Excel arcs?
So I used to be an Excel guy. Thank you very much for the compliment. Also, I used to be an Excel guy. Now I am much more of a Google Sheets guy, so that we can maintain and share that list. But to your point, it isn't how you keep the list that really matters. It's whether or not you make lists that matter. Yeah. Because there is going to be a time that you're going to think, oh, what was that guy's name that wrote that article that I really liked 2 years ago? Is I really need to tell him about my new game. And you should have that at your fingertips.
Yes, I'm just going through questions here. Okay, Adam Creighton. What's up, Adam?
Hey, Adam.
Adam's in the house. You touched on this, but can you talk about how these philosophies and processes are not a recipe, and how people can avoid the trap of do this equals success?
Sure, absolutely. And Adam, thank you so much for asking that. At every step, part of what I talked about constant improvement is to measure it. Is it working for you? and bear in mind that as always, what works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. Um, but you can measure that. So take a look at the posts that you make, and measure how much media interest you got in those. How many people retweeted those? I will also tell you, avoid controversy on that, because you can say the moon is made of blue cheese, and people will retweet that. It's not going to help your career. Um, but you need it is a constant process of what works and what doesn't. But Adam, I will tell you, while I talk about metrics and measuring that and looking at engagement, which every one of the social media platforms allows you to measure, but while I talk about that, the reality is that it's simpler. If you start feeling like this isn't working for me, you're probably right, and it's probably not working for you. But then you have to ask the next question: what could I do to make it work better? Or what in particular is not working for me?
Good. All right, we've got 4 minutes left and 4 questions so far that I see. So let's do it. Should we do a quick fire round?
Absolutely.
All right. From James Coot on YouTube: how do you handle negative news aside from not using hiatus? E.g., your game is being canceled because legit but awkward reasons, like the solo dev burned out or realized game not commercial.
You have to bite the bullet, take the criticism, accept the criticism, and where it is reasonable, respond to it. Reasonable responses say, thank you very much for what you have said. However, I would like to correct one minor misunderstanding that you may have had, as opposed to everything you wrote was wrong, which people don't like to hear. But it's hard. You're gonna have to take those lumps, and if they are deserved, you're gonna have to accept them.
Okay. From Cybershell Rev: if I pitch my game to a studio, do they care about technical and artistic breakdowns, or is that too much?
They do. Most of the time, it depends on who you're presenting to at the studio, but yes, most of the time, those are things that are of concern. But I will tell you the two things that I look for most when people pitch to me. One is, have you had a history of success? And that history of success does not mean this may be your biggest project, but if you can come to me and say, I had 3 smaller projects that A, I completed, and B, were successful, that's an indication to me. And successful can just mean I got my game out there, which is always a success, always a challenge. But if you can show me that, then I have a lot more confidence in the fourth. The other thing that people fail to put into their presentations is how much passion you put into it. Because if you're really passionate about a game, I'm going to feel that. If you're not, then I'm going to feel that too.
Yes. Okay, here we go. Christopher Williams on YouTube: I made a demo game and it's up on Steam, but it's a dead game at this point in time. It was too large of a project and I learned a lot, but also I know where I failed. Should I take it down? Well, you should send me a key. So get in the Discord and send me a key so I can check it out. But go ahead.
Christopher, I would tell you the answer is no. Do not take it down, because number one, the internet never forgets. And at some point, it'll be brought. But leave it up there. But you might want to add notes on it saying, "This is what happened. This is what didn't work, and this is what I learned from that project." That's especially good. If it's a free game. Why wouldn't you put that there?
Yeah, that's good. Type the name in there or get into the Discord and message me, because I like to check out games, failed games, not failed games. I love indie games. All right, here we go. This is from Noise Dude on YouTube. Thank you so much for your presentation. Love the section on consistency. My question is, how do you handle just putting information out on your project that is still in development?
Developer diaries. Without pause, without hesitation. Developer diaries. Developer diaries do 2 things, and you should be aware of both of them. They show the progress and the effort that you are putting into the game, and more to the point, they show you're passionate about it. You should always be excited when you're doing a dev diary.
So do you think people should go into detail of, oh, we were trying to do this, but it wasn't working, so we failed?
Never hurts to say that.
Okay.
It never hurts to say that everybody in the industry has had at least a million of those moments.
Yeah. In the game we're working on right now, there's been a lot of things that you just have to, that failed, and you course correct and you do something different. And it makes it real.
There's a book there's a book that I'm going to recommend, very easy read, called In Search of Stupidity: 20 Years of High Tech Marketing Disasters. And the thing that's amazing, what the author does is he measures the top software companies, not game development companies, over a period of 20 years. And there are only two names that appear on both lists: Microsoft and IBM. And IBM had a really hard time. But the other 8 companies all went into bankruptcy, and he gives stories on each one where it should have been clear that they had made a mistake, but instead of course correcting, they doubled down.
Yeah.
Dan, do we have a last one?
Just one comment. Raven Lost, and she's speaking in an hour. Her comment is, and start them at the beginning. It's so much harder as an afterthought. That's
absolutely good. Raven, and thank you very much for pointing that out.
Irish guy, you are watching this live. That's my watching Larry live versus recorded. Give an Irish guy a shout out, buddy. Hey, Irish guy. Yeah, did you want one final comment? Is that?
We're all good. I just want to tell you, look, this is a tough time in the industry, but this is a time also when we're going to start something new that will hopefully be better than the last generation. So
yes, progression.
My biggest concern is that that the generation that comes after me have, if not a well-worn path, at least some footprints that they can follow towards being successful.
All right, amen to that. Awesome. Thank you so much. Next, we've got Patty Toledo. Pitch Perfect, winning over publishers. It sounds like that's about pitching to publishers. So that's coming up right now. Thank you so much, Larry. Also, anyone join our Discord, discord.gg/indiegamebusiness. And if you wanted to ask or answer any questions after this, Larry, if you could go into the AMA questions channel in our Discord. Anybody else that's got questions?
I will be on there. Cheers.
Awesome. Cheers. Thank you so much.